Chapter 5. Residuals. Berik crouched low at the ridge, one hand sunk into the sand. The wind had softened, but the dunes hadn't forgotten. 4 days gone, and still the earth shifted. Tracks erased, blood buried. The carcass of the caravan lay scattered, half swallowed by the desert's quiet hunger. He stayed crouched a while longer, eyes scanning the basin below, drawing the map from memory. This was where it had all started, where they'd bled, where the girl died the first time. The wreckage hadn't moved, but the shape of the land had. The storm had chewed through the valley like a beast. What once lay bare now sat hidden under folds of grit. He moved downslope, ribs tight from the healed break. Each step landed flat, measured. The heat pressed harder now, no storm to fight it back, just glare and dust. The slope dragged at his legs. Loose sand gave no purchase. The descent burned more than expected. By the time he reached level ground, his breath came shallow, and sweat pooled along the line of his spine. He rolled one shoulder, testing the stretch across his side. Dull ache, not dangerous, but enough to matter. The first wagon he passed had split and two-wheel gone, ribs of the frame jutting upward like broken fingers. He stepped over the wreckage, scanning the sand. The outlines had changed. No more drag lines. No footprints, just ripples and silence. He moved without rush, pausing often. Bent canvas, scorched crates, collapsed yokes and beams. Much of the wood had warped under heat or cracked under wind pressure. Several of the bodies were gone pulled by animals or buried outright. One dried rib cage stuck out from a shallow drift, clean of flesh. He crouched at the next rise, eyes narrowing. A break in the dune edge, no longer a ridge, but a sag where a wheel must have rested. The sun threw it into relief. Barely. He found the place by memory, not sign. A crooked spindle of wood where canvas once draped. A faint depression in the dune where the shadow of the cart had fallen. He followed it 3 steps and dropped to one knee. There, half buried, the edge of a satchel strap. He dug. Slow, quiet. The sand resisted thick with heat, dry enough to stick. His fingers found leather, cracked but whole. He pulled the pack free. It was his. Familiar weight. Familiar smell sweat, dirt, wax-sealed oil. He brushed sand from the clasp, unlatched it, and sifted through. A half-empty flask, sealed and still viable. A coil of wire. Spare flint. Small blade. Folded cloth. Dried ink. The scent of ash from a scorched corner. The items packed with purpose, each tool where it should be, shaped by need rather than comfort. Every fold and line reflected habit, not care. Then, the locket. Silver, worn, chain frayed near the clasp. He opened it. Inside, a pressed leaf, still green despite the age, sealed under glass. The other side marked with the initials R.T. No portrait, just the leaf. A small thing plucked from a twig cut of the world tree in Alivor. Small, still intact, flattened years ago when the memory was fresh. He stared at it a long time, long enough for sweat to bead at the bridge of his nose and drip down the curve of his cheek. He ran his thumb across the edge of the glass once, not reverent, just measured. Then he looped the chain around his neck and tucked it beneath his tunic. The metal rested cold against his skin. He exhaled. Then he moved again. The remains of the caravan gave little, but not nothing. He walked wide arcs around the scattered debris, stopping to check under overturned crates and bent wheels. He kicked aside collapsed tents, ran fingers through ash piles, broke open warped barrels that still clung to their bindings. A few held rancid grain. One had dried figs, now shriveled near to dust. His steps slowed as the sun climbed. Sweat ran along his jaw. He paused often, breathing deeper than usual. His ribs protested now not from tearing, but from fatigue. Heat clung to his cloak despite the wrap across his shoulders. He drank once, lips barely touching the flask, then kept moving. A torn banner clung to one of the wagons frayed red, burned black at one end. He pulled it down, folded it twice, and set it aside. Good enough for rope. Better as cloth. Near the far edge of the site, he found a pair of boots. One torn at the heel, the other still laced. He didn't take them. The soles were wrong. He found a corpse that hadn't been picked clean. Face down, ribs cracked, guild colors sandweave tan with gold lining, a courier badge half melted on his collar. He rolled the body over and checked the satchel. Empty. He left it. Another cart stood mostly intact, burned at the rear, but the frame hadn't buckled. He climbed inside, a broken lantern, scattered tools, a hook blade stuck in a beam. He pried it loose, checked the edge, still sharp, added it to the pack. He found a dented kettle lodged under a pile of timber and pulled it free. The base was scorched, the handle half melted. Still usable. He tied it to his belt with the strap from a snapped harness. By midday, he'd built a sled. Two beams lashed together with torn canvas. A base flat enough to drag. He tied a loop of leather to pull with. Each knot tight, each lash doubled back. Simple, strong enough to hold. He loaded what he could. 2 small flasks, 1 sealed pouch of rations, several dented tins that still clinked with powder and salve, a cracked bottle with enough antiseptic to matter, spare water, a pot, a knife, the wire coil, the extra flint. He moved slow now, each step heavier than the last. His tunic clung to his back. Sand crept into his boots. He took breaks often, sitting in the shade of wrecked carts, back against warped wood. Breath shallow. Eyes closed, just for a moment. He opened one eye each time before rising. Always check the dunes. Always check the light. Late in the afternoon, he found a crate half covered by sand and shattered wood. The hinges groaned as he pulled it free. He pried the lid back with the hook blade. Inside, 6 sealed vials. Green bands around the neck. Painkillers. Alkroot mix. Standard guild issue. He checked the seals. No cracks. He took them all. Slid them into a side pouch, careful not to let them rattle. He tied a second strap to the sled, crossing it over the first to balance the weight. Every item placed with purpose. No waste, no sentiment. The sky burned hotter. By late afternoon, his pace had slowed to a crawl. He took breaks in the shadow of wrecked carts, sat with his back to broken wheels, drank only enough to wet his mouth. Then he dragged the sled farther. By the time the sun dipped low, the light turned sharp and angled. Shadows stretched across the wreckage, like bones reaching for the ridge. He'd circled most of the site. He paused at the broken central wagon, the one with the silver sigil. Nothing left inside. He'd taken what mattered before. Still, he stood there a long moment, watching the shape of it, listening. He turned from it without a word. Climbed the slope one step at a time. The dragline behind him left a clean trail. Not deep, just enough to show where the sled moved. By dusk, he crested the final dune before the vault. The light faded fast now, not soft, just gone replaced by the edge of night. He stood there, eyes on the horizon, letting the sweat dry on his face. The cloak hung damp across his shoulders. His breath came quiet, steady now, the kind of stillness that came after motion, not rest. He looked back once at the broken bones of the caravan. Nothing moved. Nothing called. Then he turned and pulled the sled behind him into the dark. Berik dragged the sled across the shallow rise, boots grinding grit into the vault slip. The last stretch had pulled hard against his ribs. The slope, though minor, drank strength in full. Sweat clung to the back of his neck. His shoulders ached. The sun had dropped behind the ridgeline, and the heat fell off in slow bands. Shadows stretched long. The cold would come next. The vault's stone mouth parted without sound, same as before. He didn't speak. He didn't signal. Still, the glyphs along the seam pulsed once in faint welcome. He hauled the sled over the threshold and let it scrape to a stop inside. Supplies and salvage lay stacked water flasks, a collapsed frame, one dented toolkit, a half-torn tarp cinched tight around bone and alloy. He turned once at the entry. Through the narrow slit in the ruin, the desert showed its edge flat, distant, colorless. One pinprick of gold broke the haze, far off, maybe a mile past the wreckage. Still glowing. He watched it for 3 breaths. Then stepped inside. Fenric stood near the center column, arms crossed. He didn't speak at first. His jaw held tight, but his stance wasn't ready for a fight, just wary. He looked like a man halfway through a sentence, waiting to be heard before he spoke. Berik didn't wait. He stepped past, let the sled drift to a stop against the vault wall. Fenric broke the silence with a half-voiced question. Anything good left out there? Berik didn't answer immediately. He crouched, unhooked one of the straps, and gestured lightly toward the hall. You didn't miss much. I could tell you'd been picking through it while I was down. Fenric's mouth worked, but no words came. He glanced at the sled, then back to Berik. He started to speak again, maybe to defend himself, maybe not, but Berik didn't let him finish. He reached under his cloak, tugged the cord at his neck free, and pulled the small locket loose. It caught the last of the fading vault light, a dull metal oval worn at the hinge. He tossed it to Fenric. Fenric caught it without thinking, eyes narrowing as he turned it over in his palm. Berik spoke low. I love her. That's how I know her. The words hung. Not dramatic, just placed, honest the way old wounds sometimes are. He stepped past Fenric, not looking back. And I will end anything that gets in my way, Berik said, because I will save her. He didn't slow. His boots tracked deeper into the vault toward the chamber that still breathed magic under stone and ash. Fenric didn't follow. He stood where Berik had left him, locket still in hand. The weight of it wasn't in the metal. He opened it once. No image, just initials and a leaf. He closed it again. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he stopped trying to make sense of Berik's presence. Instead, he started to understand it. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. He sank down by the sled, locket tight in his hand, and watched the stone corridor flicker faint with light as Berik disappeared down its path. Berik stepped into the main hall without announcement. His cloak hung loose now, half unlatched, dust still lining the folds. The ache in his ribs had dulled the background noise, but it was there a constant throb that shaped his posture. Rena moved along the far wall, her hands tracing slow arcs through the glyph lines carved into the vault stone. Each movement summoned a faint pulse of light, not bright, just deliberate. Blue, then amber, then gold. A rhythm almost too exact to feel organic. She didn't hum. She didn't breathe loud. She just moved, steady as a metronome. Berik watched her cross the last seam and stop. The glow faded as her hand dropped. He spoke without raising his voice. There's light in the distance. She didn't turn. Distance? Mile out, past the wreckage, low flicker, not wind. She faced him now. The faint glow beneath her skin carried up her jawline in narrow strands like capillaries lit from within. Lanterns? Maybe. Patrol. Recovery team. Maybe someone worse. He stepped in closer, stopped near the central pillar. I need something else from you. Her head tilted, but no reply came. He didn't press. The mapping functions the part tied to the tether. Can you search? Scan? Whatever you call it. The glyphs along her arm flared subtle and immediate. Her posture shifted. Her hands came together at her chest, palms hovering apart. Threads of light drew up her spine, out through her arms, and twisted between her fingers, like a pulse net suspended in air. Then, stillness. A faint vibration rolled through the floor. Low, wide. It passed through the vault, bounced once off the inner arches, and returned. A second later, another pulse followed, softer, narrower. Her voice came flat. Response registered. 8.2 miles, north by northeast. Structure, stone, partial collapse. Subterranean access probable. Residual glyph signature. Present. Path available. She didn't move. Berik stepped in closer, boots scuffing the stone with slow care. He didn't speak right away, just watched her. The glow hadn't faded. The lines still curled at the edges of her skin, not invasive, not hostile, just present. Then, softer, Rena. Her head tilted slightly. He took one more step. Are you still in there? For a breath, nothing. Then she spoke. I think so. It was her voice. Not clear, not clean. But it was there, just beneath the other one. The cadence of it caught something behind his ribs. He didn't blink. Neither did she. The light in her eyes faltered. For a moment, her shoulders dropped just slightly. Her mouth parted, like she might say more. Then it passed. The glow returned even in neutral. Her expression went still again, hands lowered to her sides. Berik let out a breath he hadn't noticed he'd held. He turned without another word and moved back down the corridor toward the side chamber he'd claimed. One of the old supply alcoves, half-walled, quiet, good angles. No door, but enough cover to sleep. He pulled his cloak tight as he reached it, dropped low, sat back against the stone, one hand at his ribs, the other at his side. Outside, the wind had died. Inside, the hum of old systems barely reached his ears. He closed his eyes, didn't speak, just listened, then sleep.